Hey everybody, it's Sam, and I'm live in San Diego on July 30th at 4:40 p.m. in San Diego, and talking about this full moon in Capricorn. Full moon in Capricorn is going to happen on August the 3rd at it's around 8 a.m. in the morning Pacific time, and this is opposite the sun, which is over here in Cancer. And so when we have the full moons, they show a sort of harmonizing point of contrast with the place of the sun. So we have the sun in Cancer now, and opposite that sun in Cancer is this moon in Capricorn. So we've been experiencing this Cancer cycle, which is very much about the qualities of connecting to the heart, deeper sensitivity, feeling more of like emotional nurturing, all of us being called, whether you're a man or woman, to a deeper sense of nurturing and care and protection that we want for each other and for the world. That's been going on for a couple weeks. And again, that can make us quite emotional. In the highest sense, though, that can be channeled into devotion, which is the devotion to something higher than just your own, comfort zone or whatever it might be. So, those are the qualities of Cancer that are being developed now, that are evolving this month. Again, that started, around the middle of July, like July 15th or 16th. And so that shift has brought about a deeper sensitivity, a deeper accounting for our, interactions with others. So opposite that point is the full moon. And as we see again, opposite the full moon, or I'm sorry, opposite the sun is the moon here. And this is the sign of Capricorn. So this point of contrast is important because the sun in Cancer is bringing that life lesson of being more devotional, being more, connected to the heart and, through our family and through big obligations, usually, rather than just our emotions in the moment, which is where the Cancer energy can, sort of derail our life. When we're just too emotional all the time, then we're sort of lost in the momentary ego, because the ego interacting with the heart creates emotions. Hear it again. The ego, which is your separate self, interacting with the heart creates emotions, which is on the surface. The ego is your identity on the surface, and emotions are your heart on the surface. And the agency of that engagement is usually desires, because the ego has a desire for something, usually some kind of attention, some kind of gratification. That's what the ego wants. And that attention and gratification through the desire creates an emotion. I feel good when I get it. I don't feel good when I don't get it. So this is all the surface game. But deeper than that, on the soul level, your soul craves connection to the heart, which is more transcendent. It transcends just the momentary emotions and desires to something more devotional, which is like, for example, parents are very devoted to their children. After the children grow up, hopefully we can become devoted to God and something higher in one way or another, however you call it God. So the point of contrast, which brings that Cancer energy to completion, is harmonizing that emotion in the moment with duty, commitment, things that are more eternal, which is Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. And you see, in this way, we have this contrast always going on, where the opposite energy really contains the same sort of seed dynamic, but in an opposite way. So in order for that lesson of Cancer to find completion, it has to be harmonized with the practical rationale, the rationality, the sense of maturity and whatnot that come from Capricorn energy. So again, the Cancer energy can be quite immature in the moment. I just want to feel good now, and our emotions are very immature. They're not in a judgmental way. In many ways, our emotions also really keep us connected to the heart in the moment. But if we're looking for things like, for example, with other people, not including children, because when we interact with children, then our emotions just keep us sensitive to what they need all the time. But when we start interacting with adults, and especially in a higher purpose, then our emotions keep us very stunted and keep us immature. I don't like him, and we remember all the times where somebody did something we didn't like, and it just keeps us immature. The depth is the maturity of Capricorn, where we learn from life. It's ruled by Saturn. It shows the life lessons that we've learned through time, through loss, through difficulty, through stress. We learn that things are not as simple as just feeling good in the moment, of just being happy in the moment. In fact, if our entire life revolves around just being happy in the moment, we're going to be anything but happy. We're going to be very unhappy, because it's not realistic. The world is not here to make us happy. God knows. Even our children or anything that we think is going to make us happy ultimately, as an ultimate state, that's not going to work out. But Cancer, the sign of Cancer, and the ruler, the moon, really has that desire to want to be happy in the moment. Like I said, a desire to be happy in the moment. It might sound very obvious. Well, of course, we all have a desire to be happy in the moment. Right, we do. And we're all living through our ego, trying to be happy in the moment, usually not happy. If this thing works out, then I'm happy. And anything else, and I'm not happy, or I'm maybe not sad or angry, but I'm just like going along, waiting for the next thing to make me happy. Okay, maybe this person will make me happy. Maybe this experience, maybe this piece of chocolate, maybe this TV show, maybe this. We're just always kind of careening from one experience after another that we think is going to make us happy. That's the surface of the mind, of the heart, emotions driven by something that we think is going to make us happy. Something deeper needs to take place if we're going to transcend that level, that surface layer of life and our own identity and our own ego. And those things are found in the qualities of Capricorn. And again, many of them at first especially don't feel very happy. Capricorn stuff is not usually the stuff that on the surface makes us feel very happy. Things like, being alone, people dying, death, commitment, hard work, loss, heaviness, seriousness, all this stuff that's like opposite. You can kind of see it as Cancer is sort of the stage of life where we're kind of like the awkward teenager a little bit. I'm very aware that there's a crow right outside my window. There's usually not crows. There it is. Let's hear you. And crows are related to Saturn, and you can see this eclipse on this full moon is moon joined Saturn. Now that I mentioned Saturn, let's see if the crow keeps going. Maybe he was just saying, you forgot about me. There he is. Yeah, he's right outside my window. So that's called a nimitta, or an omen. Okay, so this moon Saturn is, and now he's got me laughing, is going to be prominent on this full moon, right? And again, those qualities of Saturn are things that are heavy, where we have to face loss, where we have to grow up, where we have to not just try to enjoy life, but know something deeper and something more transcendent, which arrives usually in the form of, again, something that wakes us up and makes us more mature, not just wanting to feel good. And when we're able to do that, then we can find real peace of mind. And that peace of mind is something that, again, takes us to a more devotional place. And by the way, you can even see this very clearly with what makes, what really brings parents even, to use the example of the parent and the child, what really brings about the great lessons for the parent taking care of the child is actually all of that work and effort and service that the parent brings forth in order to care for the child. It's, the parent has this inspiration to want to have a child, and it's all inspiring, very Jupiter-like. But then they get the child, and it's a lot of hard work and service and effort. And taking care of that child brings the parent to a deeper appreciation and devotion and authentic love for that being that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't gone through all that difficulty. We could see this in everything in life, really. We don't appreciate something unless we work hard for it. Again, until we're willing to do that, or until we do that, it might make us happy on the surface. But even think about your great friendships that you've had. Most of them, or all of them, have had some form of struggle. And you've had to go deeper than just, oh, here's somebody who's going to make me happy. Oh, this makes me happy all the time. Well, it usually doesn't make you happy all the time. But going through that with them not only makes you appreciate them more, but teaches you something about your own capacities and your own, your own emotional depth. And I don't even like to call it emotional depth. I mean, it is emotional depth, but it's mainly feeling depth, that depth of feeling that's not just the emotions. I tend to really want to separate those things because emotions are literally kind of, they're impulses on some level. And we're much deeper than that. And so emotional depth means that you're not just kind of knocked around based on your emotions. And that's most of what the heart is some emotional response and impulse. And I want to be clear, this is like 95% of how we encounter our moon and our emotions. I mean, think of all of the things that just keep you kind of stuck in your comfort zone. And it's almost all just how you feel, all your emotions in the moment. You're a total creature of habit. And most of those habits come from your moon, your emotions, your feelings. Think of right now think of how many things in your life that you didn't do, or that you won't do, or that you don't do because of how it might make you feel. Even your anticipation of how it might make you feel. Like, let's say, most people have an aspiration to do something more, like in their job or in their work. By the way, I'm just as guilty of it. Even though I've achieved a certain level of success or whatever based on what I'm doing now, I'm still in my comfort zone around it. I'm comfortable doing this, but there are things that I could try that are outside my comfort zone. And I'm like, no, this is enough. This is good enough. I don't need to go too much further outside my comfort zone. But every time I have, not only did I maybe accomplish more, but I learned more about myself. Because when you go outside your comfort zone, you have to rise in your capacity to meet that moment. And until and unless you do, you won't. You'll stay in your comfort zone. And it keeps spiraling upward. It's wherever you are at that particular moment. That's why even people who become very successful, well, they want to become more successful. It's not just because they're driven by some black hole of ego. No, it's because they're trying to learn more about themselves and how much more they can handle. And they're trying to get outside their comfort zone. But that comfort zone is literally your emotions and your feelings. Think of how much of your life is just staying in that comfort zone and how much you can just get stuck in it, right? And so again, this is a great lesson of Cancer, is to observe this and to really notice, First of all, to be very compassionate is to really connect to the heart and know how much is just being triggered by emotions and comfort zone, and how much more is possible for you, how much more capacity is possible for you, how much more is possible and how much doesn't happen because you're in that comfort zone. For example, like surrounded by the family and the safe people who keep reflecting back to you, oh, you're a good person, you're a nice person, we like you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I feel good, I'm happy. And again, this is important because the next cycle is Leo. And Leo says, how powerful are you really? The lesson before is Cancer, which says, where are you in your comfort zone? That's this month. But in a couple of weeks, the sun's going to go into Leo. And now it's not going to be about how connected to the heart are you, how much in your comfort zone are you. No, the next thing is going to be, what are you willing to stand for? How much are you willing to step up and shine brightly? They build on each other. This is why the zodiac is a mandala. It starts at a certain time and goes around. We started with Aries and we're just going around. By the end, we're going to hit Pisces and it'll unwind. So right now we're at that point where it's like, okay, how much am I connected to the heart? But am I just in a safety zone, comfort zone? So I need to be able to treat people humanely and to feel that authenticity that's deeper than just pleasing people, making people happy, being happy myself. I need to go deeper than all of that emotion. This full moon in Capricorn provides that contrast. It says, here's the place where you need to concentrate, focus, get real, go deeper. And so the nakshatra of that full moon is Shravana, which is about listening, hearing, feeling the stillness and peace inside. It's very much about meditation, solitude, introspection. Shravana literally means listening and hearing, but it's also listening and hearing to stillness, silence, and peace. It's not just like music or whatever. But you want to understand that sound and silence are deeply connected, deeply related, and they're really actually different sides of the same coin. As you notice, my voice rises out of silence. Right now I'm silent, and now a sound comes out. The sound doesn't just appear magically. It's something vibrating in my throat. Then I say something. Then silence again. It arises, sound arises out of silence and then returns. You know, just like waves in the ocean. They rise and then they return back to the vast ocean. Well, the vast ocean from which sound emanates is silence. The vastness of consciousness is, if nothing else, silent. There's no sound. Stillness, silence, is the substratum of all sound and all motion. And these are deep Capricorn principles. And of course, they're deep Saturn principles. Silence, stillness, also things like solitude. Again, solitude is one of the hardest things if we don't know ourselves very well. And it's, again, this is anathema or opposite to Cancer, which is like, I want connection. I need something to care for, something to love me, someone to love, something to love me, connect with me, because I don't feel connected. That's what Cancer is. It's ruled by the moon, which wants connection. I have feeling, I have emotion, I want it to be good. Well, one of the first things that's not good to our ego is silence, stillness, solitude. It sounds so spiritual until you get some of it. You walk up to someone and you want to connect, and they don't want to. Oh, that's not very nice. Oh, and what do? We project our emotion on someone maybe who is just still and silent, or onto nothingness. One of the worst things you can do to someone who has a lot of emotional desires is say, okay, now you just be alone. You go be alone, and I'm going to take away all entertainment or all validation. Nobody's going to look at you, pay attention to you, like you, be friendly, be nice. Again, I'm not saying I enjoy that either, but what I'm saying is that there really is nothing wrong with that. If you can't exist in solitude, then you have no peace whatsoever. So again, peace is the archetype of the moon and Cancer trading connection for peace, or happiness for peace. This is the big trade-off often with the moon. Happiness feels like peace, but it's not. It's many ways, it's just neediness. Capricorn contrast says, unless you can exist in silence, stillness, solitude, be by yourself, then all of your connections are just some form of neediness. Maybe all of your connections are just because you're afraid of being alone. Oh, that could never happen. That's like what? Everybody's connection to almost everybody else? How many relationships, like romantic relationships or family relationships, are simply a fear of being alone, or a fear of what these people would say if I did something they didn't like? So many people never even are terrified of just rebelling against their family. They don't even like their family. They don't even like them, but it's their comfort zone. And what these people say about me is my whole world. And they are terrified of just being alone. Like, what would your life be without? And again, I'm not telling people to, rebel against your family or something. But what I'm saying, that's not even the point. The point is, we can exist in peace and stillness and solitude. And thus it contaminates all of our connections. If we can't exist in stillness and solitude and by ourselves, then even all of our connections are suspect, because they're just a hedge against being alone. I'd rather be with them than be by myself. I don't even like this person, but at least I'm not alone. And, how many relationships are like that? Well, it's so hard to find a connection. Well, it's better than being alone. And people just kind of suffer through it. Right? And then look for things to blame the other person with, when underneath it all, what's really going on is it's two people who are terrified of being alone. So again, this is real stuff. These are real, deep psychological and spiritual lessons. Again, this is what astrology is. It's not just, something to play around with. These are real evolutionary principles. So this full moon in Shravana, very much about stillness, solitude, introspection, in contrast to connection, love, neediness, all those other things that can be very, that can be derelict on the other side. Now these days we have there's a lot of polarizing around a lot of issues right now. I'm not an expert in like Jungian archetypes or whatever, but I know there's the one archetype. There's the archetype which is kind of like a paired opposite of the narcissist and the empath. These is two, like the narcissist finds the empath. And in many ways, they're both kind of projections of each other. Like, let's say instead of calling it an empath, if it's someone who, again, there are people who are in fact just quite needy, but in their mind, they'll like, oh, I'm just an empath. I'm just so sensitive. This reminds me of the Cancer Capricorn axis, because I know many people who are just so needy, emotionally needy and clingy. No one in particular, but just in general, we're all kind of like this. And when you might ask them about it, it's like, oh, I'm empathic and I'm so sensitive. And I'm always with these people who are so cold and all. Yes, it's my narcissist empath thing because I'm such an empath and I always attract narcissists who are so cold. Again, on some level, this is just a kind of, unless you really know yourself on a deep level. For example, if you can't sit in stillness and solitude and introspection and all like that, then you shouldn't get into thinking anything like that. You can be the narcissist and the empath, and the narcissist can become the empath, and one can become the other. And both, look, I'm not invalidating these ideas, by the way. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but I'm saying now everything has become so, like we talk about things like this so much, and we can just be deluding ourselves, really, and get into these kind of revolving doors where we tell ourselves things. This one in particular, because the empath is very much like how a Cancer person, for example, might say, rather than looking at themselves and being like, yeah, I'm just kind of clingy, or and again, I'm not even just saying Cancers, but I mean, all of us have this potential. But instead of looking at the idea that, I'm terrified of being alone, I want to have connection. It's like, oh, it's because I'm such an empath, because I'm so sensitive. Much of that is really just emotional. And what we call, oh, I'm just so sensitive, is mainly, I'm just so emotional. And what it really is I'm so sensitive to how I feel. I'm so sensitive to when my feelings get hurt. This I'm so sensitive, I'm such an empath is mainly, I'm in my own world of emotion. And if it's good, I'm happy. If it's not, I'm sad. And if it's not and I'm sad, then it's their fault, someone's fault. This is something, again, we all have to be careful with these kinds of things. Cancer is the sign, and this is the cycle where we're probably working through a lot of this, and a lot of this might be coming up. So notice that part that is like, with the things that come up emotionally, notice how much you can sit there and be still and just no projection, blame, this, that, whatever it might be, that is the answer that you've come to because of how much you've been hurt and how much everybody's mean to you and your family does this or that, all of the dramas that we have around all the emotions of all the people that, and inside, by the way, it's always one day they'll pay. They'll pay one day. I know. Because all that emotion, it's not just, oh, I'm so sensitive. It's, I'm angry. I'm angry at that too. There's this anger that comes out, and one day they'll all pay. Again, anytime we're charged up with emotion like this, there's something that's not still in us. Otherwise, we couldn't generate that much anger, frustration, hostility, and project it out. We couldn't. Because this whole Cancer-Capricorn dynamic, this whole Cancer-Capricorn, dynamic of I want connection, but people who won't give me connection are mean. This kind of like, again, it's like parent-child. Like the child wants the attention of the parent, which is like the Cancer, and the Capricorn is like, no, I'm too busy. Or again, we have to play this out within ourselves. We have to be able to also discipline our own inner child to be like, look, stop clinging, go sit and be still and learn to connect with something deeper, be more devoted to something, right? And so again, this kind of dynamic can be playing out quite a bit. As an example. So again, that Capricorn helps to complete Cancer, and Shravana is literally that part of Capricorn that is silence, stillness, that is not external. And strong Capricorn energy really likes the solitude and the stillness, and again is empowered by that. So like, for example, when it comes around the other side, like let's say if the sun were over here in Capricorn and the moon were in Cancer, well, then there would be maybe too much of that solitude, stillness, where again, because now the Capricorn lesson would be like, okay, it's all up to me and I got to take it on myself. And I'm a fortress. Again, that extreme of a Capricorn extreme needs to be harmonized with the Cancer part, which is, no, there's other people, and I also need love, and I need nurturing, and I need safety and connection. So, these are extremes. And when we get the sun in one, the sun is saying, okay, here's the lesson. And this lesson for the last couple of weeks, and as the sun goes through Cancer, is how connected to the heart am I? Connected to the heart, not just triggered by emotion, but connected to my heart. And how much depth is there? Because when I'm just triggered by emotion, I'm not connected to my heart. So then I project that out, and all of my connections then become somewhat contaminated by my emotional neediness. I can't sit still. I can't connect. The reason I'm not connected to my own heart is because I'm not going deep. I'm just triggered by emotion on the surface. And then so when the emotion doesn't work, I project it onto some other outside. And this is what keeps me disconnected from the heart. So this is why full moons are so potent, because they're bringing up the opposite thing. They're bringing up that opposite thing that says the problem is not something outside. It's you can't sit still and be quiet. Now, be quiet and go inward. Capricorn stuff is like the discipline, right? It's like disciplining the child that just wants the connection. It's like, okay, at some point, you need to just go sit in your room and be quiet. Turn everything off, and that's it. And again, sometimes this is why Saturn lessons sometimes can be severe. Saturn lessons are that kind of punishing quality. It feels punishing. It's also very liberating. It's very liberating. Anybody who has a powerful Saturn loves it. And anytime we connect with powerful Saturn, even if we don't have a powerful Saturn, we've all felt that beauty and liberation of Saturn before. We all know what I'm talking about. At some point, when the ego fails and all of that strategy fails, and you just have to give it up sometime, or it gets taken, and then you just have nothing left but to sit there and face it. It's actually quite beautiful. You can cry, or you can just let it go. And what typically happens is we try so hard to hang on to it that by the time we let it go, there's been quite a bit of suffering. We've created some suffering around us, and we realize our mistakes. Again, this is what Saturn does, is it teaches us our mistakes. By the way, I'm talking about that too because Saturn has joined the moon. So there could be quite a bit of awareness of your mistakes around these things now as we get closer to that, especially in early August. But really, like, awareness of your mistakes and how maybe you've, again, maybe villainized other people, or maybe tried to project, I don't know, whatever it might be, the themes that I'm talking about, and realizing that and finding that deeper point of sensitivity within. Because what winds up happening is Saturn makes us very sensitive to everyone's suffering. And again, actually, one of the things that can happen in Cancer for sure is, again, in some ways it's kind of a childish sign, in the sense that it has that innocence of that sort of childlike innocence, but it can also be, quite, what's the word I was thinking of, is just not very kind and compassionate underneath it all, and feeling like they're the only ones who suffer, and then holding grudges and these kinds of things. Saturn, which is, it's actually a functional malefic for a Cancer person. It's a difficult energy. And again, when Saturn is powerful, we get the gift of forgiveness, for one thing. We stop holding on to grudges and holding on to things that people did to us, and all of these notions, because everything that's been done to us, we've done some version of it too, on some level. And again, only people that want to remain childish would deny something like that. It's not exactly the same thing, but we've all perpetrated. And until we make peace with all that has been done to us, and all my childhood and all this and all that, we're just hanging on. We're just still playing this game. We're just playing some version of this game. And the soul wants to stop that game. It wants to forgive. It wants to forgive everyone. When I do, one of the things when I teach, especially when I teach relationship astrology and talk about it, you never want to bypass anything that happens. Things happen, of course, But no one wants to think, for example, that the people they've loved in their life, no one wants to really believe, or in fact, no one really does believe that the people that they've loved or whatever are these sociopathic, narcissistic, abusing. No one wants to think that about someone they were married to or this or that. And when I mentioned that stuff earlier, to me, a lot of it is just that we're getting these answers and it sounds like something that's maybe similar, but no one wants to really think that about people that they've loved, especially when from the other person's point of view, you look the same way. Like from anyone's point of view, whoever's watching this, you at times look like a total narcissistic, sociopathic lunatic. We all do from someone's point of view, especially when we've been really intimate. We've all done things like that. So we can bring these labels out and do all this stuff, but nobody wants to go through their life thinking that that's really what happened, that I just got involved in this thing and I just attract this weird thing and all these pathologies. We want to understand things better and be able to release it, because as long as we're hanging on to all that, we're also not releasing any of it. We're just like attached, and there's this thing that we just can't get past. We can't get past it. And so the great thing Saturn does is it gives us what that maturity and what that solitude does is it gives us that capacity to feel the truth around these things, which leads to deeper sensitivity and a deep forgiveness of what was done to us, forgiving ourselves, and a deep compassion around these things. Because again, what I was going to say is sometimes Cancer energy can be some of the most insensitive in this regard, as if they're the only ones that ever feel pain. Again, aside from Cancer, I'm not talking about cancers, but I mean this quality of life where we're just connected to our emotions. They can be some of the most sort of narcissistic, to use that word, which I don't really like those words. I'm using them because they're in the vocabulary, but emotions can be some of the most narcissistic things ever. If you've ever been around somebody who's depressed, and I don't mean clinical depression or to make light of it, but someone who's just always in their own emotions, it's like you can't ever get out of water with it. And again, they're always like, oh, and they don't realize how insensitive it is to always have everything be about their emotions. Other people have feelings too. Other people have emotions too. And so again, the Capricorn contrast is very much like, it's almost like you hit that wall, and it's like the wall is sort of like containing that water. It's like, okay, it can only go so far. Now you have a barrier here. And that practical reckoning, that practical awareness shows, wow, you know what? I'm pretty insensitive too. I'm pretty, I wasn't very nurturing and loving either when that person didn't do what I wanted. Look at how I behave. Look at that. And again, sometimes it brings that sort of guilt that helps to wake us up and perhaps apologize, or at least be sensitive to other people's suffering, because we feel our own suffering. And Saturn brings suffering. It's suffering for our mistakes. And that includes the mistakes that have been done to us. We can feel them, and we can hopefully see them in a more universal way. You know, one of the things to understand is that karma and the things that we're going through is really not personal. The more we personalize everything, again, this is just the ego. My suffering, my thing, this was done to me. I'm this, me, all the stuff that we're owning. Again, you never want to act like none of that happened. Of course it happened, and it shows our history and why we're the way we are. But, you know, the past is not the future. You know, the history is not the future. And none of us want it to be. We want to develop and evolve beyond that. And so when we are able to reckon with but it has to start with ourselves. We have to sit with where we are first and check in with our own feeling state and our own capacity for sensitivity and nurturing and self-love, and also nurturing those who have tried to nurture us, our family members, other people that because that's where our deepest wounding comes from. And like I said before, I'll just tie this part of it up. Until we work through all that, or relative to how much we've actually worked through all of that, which is the Cancer Capricorn thing. We're at Cancer Capricorn right now. Until and relative to how well we've worked through all that, we don't grow and inspire and act in that power of Leo, which is the next lesson. This is the lesson we're working on now. How sensitive am I? How connected to the heart? Because you need that emotional integrity in the heart to be able to do those big things. The reason you don't do those big things, the reason you don't really go for it, is because you're still hanging on to all this stuff. You're still like, you're emotionally unsure of yourself, trying to get approval, blaming, remember what everybody did to you all, and you're suspecting enemies and difficulty that you won't be able to handle if you take on more responsibility and power. So relative to how much you've actually worked through all this stuff, this is what really holds you back. No one external is doing it. They can't. No one can. No one can. Only you can. Only you can keep hanging on to this. So this Cancer Capricorn is a big axis in working through our emotional, psychological, points of, I should say, sticking points where we can get stuck. And so much of that is what prevents us from stepping into our higher light, our higher wisdom, and our higher contribution, which is Leo. Because Leo, which comes in, it's starting in a couple weeks, that's where we want to take the glorious entity that we are and share it in the highest with no limits and be like, yes, this is the great thing. How well are we able to do that when we're still, again, trying to get approval from people and playing this emotional game, and we're still just stuck with all those enemy images of victims and perpetrators and all that. This is where we get hung up. This is a big place, right? And, this is why we have these Gandanta points as well. This Gandanta between Cancer and Leo, this is where the Nakshatra schema starts over and the Rashis move into the next level. So big stuff happening here. And so as we get close, and again, I talk about this in a general way because we're leading up to that. I'm recording this now, and I'm recording this on the 30th. So we're here. The moon is in Scorpio in Jeshta, and then over the weekend, we're going to have it. What is this, Thursday? Yeah. So Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday, Friday, Saturday, mainly we're in Sagittarius. Moon will be joined Jupiter and Ketu. Then on Sunday, it goes into Capricorn, and it'll be very close to the sun. I'm sorry, very close to Saturn. So again, the start of next week, which would be Monday, Sunday. Sorry, I got the days wrong. Sunday. Yeah, whatever the days are here. Excuse me, Thursday. So we're Thursday here. Friday, Saturday, we're in Sagittarius mostly. And then Sunday, we're in Capricorn, and it's very close to the sun. So again, over the weekend, we'll feel that shift from Sagittarius to Capricorn, which again, between now and then is really a time to connect with your deeper teachings. The moon is in Scorpio now. Friday, Saturday, really connect with your higher teachings and gurus and higher wisdom. It's there, and you have it in you, and you've learned it. And then Sunday, the moon goes into Capricorn, where again, now it's bringing that wisdom into a path of duty, commitment, effort, hard work. And then we have the full moon on Tuesday, it'll be like on Tuesday in Shravana. And, that we'll feel it a lot more at that time. And, be careful of like the triggering around these issues that I'm talking about for the next few days, and have compassion for yourself and others and those who have suffered. We've all suffered. All of us have Saturn somewhere. We've all suffered. We've all been beaten down. We felt bad. We felt misunderstood and tormented and confused and mistreated and abused and all that stuff. We all have it, and it's been painful for all of us. And when I talk about things like this, I don't minimize it. I don't minimize it for others or myself, or but we also just have to really know that underneath it all, we're here so that the soul can evolve beyond this. Sometimes people will get upset when they think, oh, you can't just act like none of that stuff happened, or that we didn't go through these things. I never think that. But what I obviously, I don't think that at all. This is why you do spiritual practices. Some of that could include, different kinds of therapy and learning about these things that I was talking about before, like Jungian concepts and analysis and things like that is very helpful. These are very helpful ways to try to understand our mind and capacities. I don't mean to minimize any of those things. I just mean that also in this world, sometimes those things can be a crutch or an excuse and be misunderstood. We can't just take off the table things like all of the spiritual practice, the sadhana, the meditation, the yoga, the pranayama, the breathing exercises. And those spiritual practices especially are the things that are so important in Capricorn. Because again, it's literally taking all of the beliefs of Sagittarius, all of those, I believe this, and I have this teaching and this guru, and I believe this thing, and putting it into practice. So if all of those things that you believe, just to land at home, all those things that you might believe about your life and your relationships, and in fact, this world we have now where we believe all kinds of stuff, if those kinds of things don't actually lead you to some kind of spiritual practice, then at some point you got to ask yourself, what good is it? Because we're not just here to believe a bunch of stuff. Believing a bunch of stuff is the easiest thing in the world. I believe this, I believe that. What is it getting you if it doesn't lead you to doing some kind of spiritual practice? This is why underneath it all, I always come back to the yogic practices, because they're practices. And only through practice, this is karma, only through taking these actions that will actually unfold consciousness into a higher dimension, are you really going to transform? Other than that, you're just believing things. And again, we believe things. Some of the things are right, some are wrong. We believe all kinds of things. Nothing makes your beliefs certain like practicing them, putting them into practice. And very few belief systems are connected to practices. Again, like pranayama, breathing, alternate nostril breathing. Do that and then tell me that you still hate the world. Again, people have all these ideas about how you've been abused and this and that, and that these people are this way and these are sociopaths and all. Okay, have all those ideas. Now sit there and do Anuloma Viloma and do Kapalabhati, Anuloma Viloma, and sun salutations. And tell me if you still feel that way. Tell me if that whole thing that just had you all worked up is really that important right now. Because I bet you it's not. And then try skipping getting enraged about something and then just go for and then next time just go for the pranayama. And then maybe do some chanting, and then maybe connect to your beloved guru with a beautiful picture on your altar and incense and flowers, and do an offering and a puja. So the next time, instead of getting fired up about how everybody's mistreated you, do that instead. Do that. Just try it. See what happens. Just see what happens. Just a crazy thought. Instead of being alone, again, watching some movie, especially some movie that's some violent, weird ass thing that probably isn't helping your life at all. Instead of doing that, try something else. Do this action instead of that action, and see what happens. See the quality of your consciousness. And eventually you'll start to examine, maybe, again, it's not like these ideas or these beliefs or these projections or whatever it is that I'm thinking. It's not like they're technically wrong, but is it really serving me? And is it serving my higher consciousness, so to speak? Is it really making me, happy, which is really what we want anyway in Cancer, is we want to be happy. And by the way, that shouldn't be underestimated. I'm not saying we shouldn't be happy. In fact, the power of that Cancer and those emotions is to keep connecting us with something that makes us happy and that feels good. And when we're connected with something that makes us feel good, especially if it doesn't have a terrible hangover effect afterward, then this is how we judge that we're on the right track. So of course, having that pleasant emotional experience and being around people we feel good, that's what we're supposed to be following. We're supposed to follow that. But we just always have to guard our motivations as well. And again, checking in on a little deeper level than just that, what's making me happy right now. Just a little layer behind that or underneath that is a deeper layer which says, but isn't this also just kind of like I'm just sort of escaping, or I'm just kind of doing this, or I'm just kind of connected to this because I'm afraid of being alone. Listen to your intuition. Your intuition will lead you right to the truth. Again, this is all that Cancer energy, because what's deeper than just the emotions is the intuition, and then the intuition takes you right to the soul. The intuition is that very quiet voice that we drown out with all of the clamor of the senses. The clamor of the senses and all of our desires are very loud. The flashing lights that we follow. Underneath that is something more quiet, but it's there all the time. We're always checking in with it. Is this really the thing? Am I just doing this because of that? We use it all the time. But again, we're very programmed. So flipping that switch right now in this Cancer cycle is what we've been doing for a couple weeks. And as it builds to a head for this full moon in Capricorn, you're going to see it draw more and more into contrast this need for stillness, silence, introspection, as a contrast to that losing ourselves. And again, so notice when negative emotions might come up or something like that, try something different. Like I say, see what happens if you start to feel that. And by the way, this is a typical yogic practice, is some sort of changing in your breath. If you start breathing differently, you'll have different thoughts. This isn't some weird, it's amazing that it's not taught all the time, but even if you have an angry thought, you actually have the same pattern of breathing. You cannot be angry and breathe like you're in love. You can't. It's impossible. If you're angry about something, you are breathing a certain way. Your breath is shallow, it's choppy. Otherwise, every state of mind has a breathing pattern associated with it. This is why if you're angry and you start taking deep breaths, your anger will dissipate. Your anger is your creation, and you alone. You create it, and you keep it going because you like it. Your anger, fear, all of that stuff. Again, we say we don't like to think that we like it. Again, people don't like when I say things like this. They're like, well, who likes anger? Who likes fear? Everybody, when they keep doing it. It's a habit like everything else. We get comfortable with this person is nasty, this person is angry, and we get our adrenaline rush from working ourselves up like that. And so all of these emotional states are within your power to change and to regulate. To make it simple, though, without all of that, this is why in every path of yoga and dharmic culture, simply doing like a holistic yoga practice every day. You don't have to do it that much. Just do it every day. It doesn't even have to be that long. It can even be like a half an hour of an intensive yoga practice. Starting with that every day will automatically tend to balance out all of the extremes. That's why I learned the Shivananda yoga style. I got trained in that. You just do the asana, just do that practice. Even if you can't do a long practice every day, just moving the sequence, some sun salutations, some alternate nostril breathing, Kapalabhati breathing, some, the asana sequence that works through each of the chakras, moves the body, opens up the channels with shavasana and relaxation in between each one. If you just do that every day, your mind and consciousness will become so regulated that you will have to intentionally disturb yourself, which you'll do, by the way, because what happens is it's a phenomena, but our ego does not like when we start to get still and present because our ego is used to what it's used to. Every person who's done a lot of yoga at one point or a lot of spiritual practice knows this is true. You start becoming, your ego starts to lose its grip. and you really start to expand, and it's uncharted territory. It's scary. It's scary to your ego, because you're like, I don't know what I'm becoming. I'm so light and still and peaceful. And you're like, okay, now let me do this to come back. Let me watch some porn. Let me drink some coffee. Let me do something to come back into my normal state, because this yoga stuff actually really works. Sitting this way and breathing this way and connecting to God and worship and bhakti and all that, it works. No belief required. It's science. So these are great possibilities right now. Everybody's saying I'm on point today. Okay, I'm glad. So I'm glad people liking it. So Pat, thank you. I'm glad we're getting some good feedback here. You know, these are big times now that we're looking at, and a lot of big change is happening, and these lunation cycles really pull things into contrast. And this one is big with Moon Saturn conjunction and this Cancer Capricorn axis. A great time between now and then to really examine your emotional state, your devotional state, and really connect with the heart in a deeper way. Try authentic spiritual teachings, putting them into practice, and see what happens. See what happens. You might be surprised at how your emotions get regulated. You become peaceful and still. Guess what? All that stuff actually works. It's science. It's not belief. It's not a religion. It's not believing in things that happen and, oh, I believe it's this, and I think this is what I'm this, and I had that, and these people are that, and all this. It's not believing in anything. It's doing something. It's practice. It's a spiritual practice. The key word on practice. Just like you can think and believe, you can believe all day what sugar tastes like. Oh, I believe sugar tastes like this. Well, if you really want to know, put a little on your tongue and you'll know. You want to know what spirituality feels like? Do some spiritual practice and you'll know. That's an example from my Guru Amma. Very simple, beautiful training. We can have a bunch of ideas about things, but it's like we think something is sweet, but it's like writing sugar on a piece of paper and licking it and expecting it to be sweet. Again, we have all these ideas about things and we don't do it. You want to know what sugar, the sweetness of it? Taste it. You want to know what the sweetness is of meditation and stillness in your mind? Do some of it. You'll see. It works. It's the course. It's your soul's, destiny and course to, drop into that stillness. So I hope that this was helpful. And if it was, go ahead and subscribe and like and share this with people if you think they'll also enjoy it. And you all take care.